The sun had never fully risen over the crystalline towers of Zerith, the alien capital of Virelia. The light bent and scattered through the city's tall, sharp structures, painting the streets with strange patterns. The city was alive, but to most humans it felt cold, dangerous, and unwelcoming. Here, humans were fragile curiosities watched with suspicion, sometimes dismissed as mistakes of evolution. Mira Lorne walked through the streets with her head down, clutching her satchel close. She was small, her hair tied in a loose braid, but her eyes burned with focus. Every day she risked angering the alien guardians just by studying the ruins beneath the temples. The texts she copied were fragile and ancient, some older than any living alien. Most humans would have stayed away. Most humans were afraid. Not Mira. She had discovered something in the ruins that no one else had seen. A fragment of the old language, one that might hold the key to secrets the aliens themselves had forgotten. Her fingers traced the carved letters as she read aloud, softly, careful not to be overheard. Each word carried power, she could feel it vibrating in her chest. She had spent months memorizing these patterns, hours alone in the dark tunnels where alien patrols rarely came. The wind from the crystalline towers carried a chill that made her shiver. Myra's stomach tightened with anxiety. If she were caught by the priesthood scouts while carrying forbidden texts, the punishment could be deadly. But she could not stop. The human's survival might depend on this knowledge. She had to understand the language. She had to learn. Above the city, massive skyships floated silently, their hulls glowing with strange energy. From these ships, the priesthood watched the citizens and humans alike. Mira had learned to read their signals, to sense when they were near, and to hide. She ducked behind a street pillar as a patrol of alien sentinels passed, their long crystalline staves leaving trails of light in the air. Her heart thumped, her pulse quickened. One wrong move could expose her secret work. She slipped into a narrow alley, pulling out a small device she had built herself. It projected a faint holographic map of the ruins below the central temple. Mira studied it carefully, her mind racing. She had found a chamber beneath the temple that no one had entered for centuries. The symbols there were complex, dangerous, and powerful. They hinted at a treaty from long ago, a pact between species that even the current priests did not fully understand. A sudden sound behind her made her freeze. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate enough that she could tell they were hunting. Mira pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath. The footsteps passed and she let out a shaky sigh. Fear had always been her companion in this city, but she had learned to use it. Fear sharpened her senses, made her quicker, made her stronger. Humans might be smaller, weaker, but they were clever. They survived by thinking, by daring, by refusing to bow to fear. Reaching the ruins was not easy. The entrance was hidden beneath broken steps and rubble, guarded by traps the aliens had left behind to keep intruders away. Myra's hands shook as she disarmed a simple sensor with a tool she had fashioned herself. Sweat ran down her forehead, but her mind remained clear. Every movement mattered. Every mistake could be her last. Finally, she stepped into the chamber. The air was thick and smelled of dust and age. Strange symbols glimmered faintly in the darkness, etched into the walls with alien precision. Myra's heart raced, but this was the moment she had trained for. She whispered the first line of the ancient language, and the chamber seemed to hum in response. The sound vibrated through her chest and head, a low, strange resonance that felt alive. Suddenly, a voice echoed behind her. Sharp, accusing, full of disbelief. "Who dares enter the chamber of the ancients?" Mira froze, her mouth dry. The voice was alien, commanding, full of authority and rage. She turned slowly and there, framed by the light from the doorway, stood one of the high priests. Tall, gleaming like crystal, eyes flashing with shock and fury. Her mind raced. She had expected this confrontation eventually, but not so soon, not so directly. Her heart pounded, fear mixing with determination. If she spoke, she could be destroyed. If she ran, she could be captured. And yet, there was a chance. A slim chance. Mira inhaled deeply. She stepped forward, lifting her head, and whispered the next words of the ancient tongue. The sound was soft, almost musical, yet it carried certainty and strength. The priest blinked, confusion flickering across his sharp features. He had not expected this. No human had ever spoken these words in centuries. The chamber grew silent except for her voice. Even the air seemed to wait. Myra's pulse raced, her hands trembled, but she held herself steady. The weight of her people's survival rested on her. One misstep, one wrong word, and everything would be lost. But then, just as the priest's expression shifted from shock to disbelief, a loud vibration shook the ground beneath them. Somewhere in the city, alarms blared. The human's presence had been detected. Someone or something had triggered a warning. The priest's eyes widened further, his staff shaking in his hands. Myra's mind raced. Danger was closing in, but so was her moment. She had a choice: flee and hide like every human before her, or stand, speak, and show them what humanity could do. She whispered one final word in the ancient tongue. The priest's staff trembled violently. Silence fell again. And then, a low hum started in the walls, almost like the chamber itself had awakened. Outside, chaos was building. Inside, a human girl had done what no one else had dared. The next moment would decide everything. Myra's heart pounded so hard she thought the priest might hear it. The chamber hummed with energy, a strange vibration that made her teeth chatter. The high priest, Xeric, stepped forward cautiously, his crystalline staff glinting with a pale light. His eyes were wide, not with anger this time, but disbelief. He had heard the words. He had felt their power. No human should have been able to speak this language, and yet here she was, standing, alive, breathing, daring. Impossible, Xeric whispered, his voice like chimes cracking against stone. How can you speak the tongue of the ancients? Myra swallowed hard. She felt a twinge of fear, but it was mixed with determination. I studied, she said simply. I learned the language, the patterns, the words they left behind. I can read what the ancients wrote. I can understand it. Xeric's fingers tightened around his staff. Knowledge of the ancients is forbidden to humans, he said, his tone rising. You dare to wield it in our sacred hall? I don't dare, Myra replied steadily. I must. My people, we are in danger. If you destroy the humans, all of our knowledge, all of our potential will be lost. I came here to prevent that. The priest's lips trembled. Rage, disbelief, and confusion warred in his crystalline features. He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, a booming alarm shook the temple. The ground beneath them rattled, and the walls of the chamber quivered. Myra's stomach dropped. Somewhere outside, chaos was erupting. Alarms blared, and distant shouts of alien voices filled the air. She knew immediately, it wasn't a drill. Someone, or something, had breached the city. Xeric's staff glowed brighter. The outer gates, he shouted. They've been attacked. The rogue faction of zealots, they've breached the barriers. Myra's mind raced. She had studied the defensive protocols of the city as carefully as she had the ancient language. If the barriers fell, the humans in Xerith would be slaughtered before anyone could react. And yet here she was, a single human girl standing against centuries of alien might and an armed faction of extremists. Show me, Xeric demanded, his tone brittle but urgent. Show me what you can do. Protect this chamber. Myra stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly as she touched the carved symbols on the chamber wall. The letters glimmered faintly beneath her fingers. I can activate the protective wards, she said, her voice steady despite the terror in her chest. But you must let me do it. Stand back. Xeric hesitated, fear flickering in his eyes. Then after a tense pause he stepped aside. The other priests watched silently, their own shock mixed with awe. Myra focused on the symbols, recalling the patterns she had memorized in the ruins. She whispered the ancient words, letting her voice flow like a thread weaving through the chamber. The walls began to glow, light spreading across the carvings and intricate designs. Energy hummed beneath her fingertips. Outside, the sounds of the attack grew louder. Explosions shook the outer streets. Myra felt a pang of panic, but she forced herself to breathe, to focus. Each syllable, each gesture had to be perfect. One misstep and the barriers would fail, leaving countless humans exposed. The symbols on the walls responded, humming louder and brighter. A translucent dome of energy began to form around the chamber, stretching outward, covering the surrounding area. Myra felt the pull of power beneath her, dangerous and exhilarating. This was ancient technology, a language of creation and defense, and she was channeling it. Xeric stepped closer, awestruck. How is a human doing this? He whispered. His staff shook slightly, as if even he could not control the energy now flowing from the chamber. Myra didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the growing shield, her mind calculating, adjusting, making tiny corrections. Outside, a group of rogue zealots appeared at the edge of the city, weapons raised, moving toward the temple. They were not human-sized, they were massive, armored, cruel. They shouted in a harsh alien tongue, unaware that the shield would halt them. The energy dome flared and the attackers slammed into it. Sparks erupted, their weapons useless against the invisible wall. The humans behind the barrier cheered quietly, huddling together as the shield held firm. But Myra's chest tightened with worry. The rogue faction was clever, they would not stop. They would find another way. More are coming, Xeric said, his voice tense. Do you know what they want? I don't know, Mira admitted. But I do know this, if they breach the city all humans will die. I have to keep them out. Her voice faltered slightly as fear crept in, but her resolve hardened. She would not fail. Humans had survived worse odds and she would prove it again. Suddenly the chamber trembled violently more than before. A sharp cracking noise echoed through the walls. Myra's fingers slipped for an instant, and a pulse of energy shot toward the ceiling, causing a shard of crystal to shatter. She froze, heart racing. The dome wavered. Outside, the zealots were regrouping, their energy weapons glowing brighter. Mira realized the barrier could not hold forever. She had to act faster, smarter. Xeric's eyes met hers, filled with a mix of fear and awe. Human, you may be the only hope, he said almost reverently. Myra's mouth went dry but she nodded. She took a deep breath and began whispering the words faster, shaping the energy, bending the symbols in ways she had only imagined. The shield pulsed with light, growing stronger, but the rogue faction was relentless and she could feel them testing it, probing for weakness. Then a shadow moved across the chamber doorway. Myra's eyes snapped to the movement. A figure taller than any human stepped inside. Not a priest. Not one of the guards. Someone else. Someone dangerous. Her stomach dropped. The moment of true test had arrived. The shadow at the doorway froze and Myra's pulse jumped. The figure was massive, taller than any priest, draped in black crystalline armor that reflected the chamber's humming light. Its face was hidden, but she could feel the weight of intelligence and intent behind its presence. This was no ordinary zealot. This was a master of the rogue faction, a commander sent to finish the attack. Myra's breath hitched, but she refused to back down. She had faced patrols, hazards, and alarms before, but this was different. The barrier she had raised could repel many attackers, but this one could likely find a way through. She clenched her fists, feeling the tremor of fear run through her. Humans were small, fragile, and underestimated, but fragile did not mean helpless. Not today. The commander advanced, each step ringing like a drumbeat of doom. Mira knew she couldn't just defend, she had to outsmart him. Her eyes darted across the chamber. The walls, the ceiling, the symbols etched in stone, they all pulsed with energy. She had spent months learning how to read these symbols, how to make them respond. Maybe, just maybe she could use them. Stay back. Xeric shouted, raising his staff. He glanced at her, tension writ across his crystalline features. Do not try anything foolish, human. This is beyond you. Myra's lips pressed into a thin line. I have no choice, she whispered. Fear and determination danced together inside her chest. She stepped forward and laid her palms on the carvings, whispering the ancient words faster now, shaping the symbols with precision. Her mind worked in frantic bursts, recalling every pattern, every resonance she had memorized. The walls glimmered brighter and the energy in the chamber shifted. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the air, through her bones. The commander faltered for a moment, stepping cautiously, sensing the change. Myra's heart surged with hope. She could do this. Humans might be weaker physically, but their brains were fast, adaptive, clever. She had studied, she had learned, and now she could fight in ways no brute force could match. With a quick gesture, Mira sent a pulse through the symbols, directing it outward. The energy formed a web-like lattice around the commander, slowing him as the chamber hummed with power. He swung his staff, but the pulse absorbed the impact, ricocheting harmlessly. The human girl's mind raced. He was testing the shield, probing for weakness, and she had to anticipate his moves before he could act again. You think you can stop me? The commander's voice boomed. It was metallic, alien, and full of fury. You are nothing but a child. Myra's chest tightened, but she held her ground. Maybe, she whispered. But children can surprise you. She adjusted the pulse, increasing its intensity in careful increments. Sparks flew, energy crackling through the lattice, forcing the commander back. Xeric stared in disbelief. The priest had never seen a human manipulate the symbols like this. Impossible, it shouldn't work, he muttered. But the proof was there, alive, pulsing, undeniable. The commander roared and lunged forward, stronger, faster, but Mira anticipated him. Using the ancient language, she activated the resonance chambers embedded in the walls. The sound waves pierced the air, vibrating at a frequency that interfered with the commander's armor. The crystalline plates shifted and trembled. The lattice tightened, holding him in place. Keep going. Xeric shouted, stepping back to avoid the energy bursts. You can control it. Myra's fear transformed into focus. Every word she spoke, every motion she made was calculated. Humans had survived because they could think, adapt, and innovate in ways others could not. She bent the energy, guiding it through the chamber's conduits. Light and sound intertwined, forming an intricate trap the commander could not escape. Suddenly the lattice pulsed violently, the commander frozen mid-step. Sparks flew from his armor as the chamber hummed like a living thing. Mira realized she had done it. She had used knowledge and cleverness, not brute force, to neutralize a being far stronger than her. The rogue commander struggled, but the ancient wards held him firmly. Ziric's voice cracked with awe. I have never seen this, a human, controlling the ancient's power. Myra's chest heaved with exhaustion and exhilaration. Her hands shook, her throat dry, but she stood tall. The chamber vibrated with energy, alive, responding to her words. For a moment she allowed herself to feel pride. Humans were small, fragile, underestimated, but they could be brilliant, brave, and unstoppable when necessity demanded it. Then a loud, mechanical screech erupted from the outer streets. Myra's eyes snapped to the doorway. The rogue faction's drones had arrived, cutting through the energy barriers surrounding the city. They were not part of the commander. These machines moved faster than any organic attacker, relentless and destructive. Her stomach twisted. The wards in the chamber could hold the commander, but the drones would not be so easily stopped. She had only seconds to act. She had to find a new way, think faster, act faster, or the city and every human in it would be lost. Mira swallowed, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Fear, determination, and courage burned together in her chest. Humans had survived impossible odds before, and today she would prove they could do it again. Her mind raced, scanning the symbols, the chamber, the resonance. The answer was there if she could just reach it in time. The commander glared at her, struggling against the lattice. The drones advanced. The chamber hummed like a living thing. Mira knew she had one shot. And then she spoke. The chamber vibrated, alive with energy as Myra's voice rose. Every syllable of the ancient tongue she spoke twisted the symbols in the walls, sending harmonic pulses across the room. The rogue commander struggled against the lattice, his armor cracking under the resonance, but Myra's mind was already racing ahead. The drones outside, hundreds of them, metallic, fast, and relentless, were closing in on the city. If they breached the streets, human lives would be lost in an instant. She clenched her teeth and scanned the chamber. The resonance chambers embedded in the walls were designed to amplify sound, to shape energy, but they had never been used by a human, never manipulated in real time under pressure. Mira realized she could use them like a weapon. A human weapon. "Hold on, everyone," she muttered, almost to herself. Her hands moved along the carvings, precise, deliberate. She channeled her voice, shaping the frequency to reach the outer streets. The first drones collided with invisible waves, shuddering as circuits overloaded. Sparks flew and one by one they toppled like trees in a storm. Ziric's eyes widened. How are you doing this?" he gasped, his staff trembling. The priest had studied these chambers his entire life. He had never seen a human control the energy so perfectly, so intuitively. Mira didn't answer. She couldn't. Every ounce of her focus went to controlling the resonance, directing it in waves, arcs, pulses. The commander lunged, breaking part of the lattice, but she anticipated him, sending a high-frequency pulse that vibrated through the armor, forcing him back. He roared, but he could not escape the human's control. Outside, the drones were relentless. They split, trying to flank the city, bypassing the outer wards. Myra's pulse quickened. She could not reach them all, at least not in the conventional sense. Then she remembered the hidden conduits she had discovered in the ruins below the temple. She could extend the harmonic waves directly into the city's power grid. If she could overload it at precise intervals, she could create a cascading effect that would disable the drones completely. She acted. Her voice climbed higher, weaving the ancient tongue into a complex rhythm, shaping energy waves like threads in a web. Sparks ran along the walls, connecting to the conduits. The city trembled. People ran for safety, hiding behind the barriers she had reinforced. Humans had never been allowed in the city's inner chambers before, and now they watched in awe as a human girl bent alien technology to her will. The commander roared in frustration, shattering part of the lattice again, but Mira was ready. She twisted the resonance, trapping him between pulsing waves. The walls vibrated violently, shards of crystal rattling loose, and yet she remained steady, guided by calculation and instinct. Fear threatened to overwhelm her, but she refused it. Fear sharpened her senses. It reminded her why she was here. Humans might be smaller, weaker, fragile, but they were clever, daring, unstoppable when they refused to give in. Then the drones hit the streets. Metallic shells smashed into buildings, energy beams slicing through walls. Mira focused harder, extending the harmonic pulses into the city grid. Sparks flew, circuits overloaded, and one by one the drones fell, convulsing, short-circuiting, crashing into streets and rooftops. Humans cheered in the shadows, eyes wide with hope and disbelief. Xeric stepped closer, voice trembling with awe. A human, a single human, saved the city. Myra's voice shook as she directed the final pulse. The commander's armor fractured, his energy weapons disabled by the harmonic overload. He stumbled, forced to his knees, unable to fight further. Myra's mind raced, not out of fear now but with triumph. Humans had survived against impossible odds, not by strength alone, but by courage, intelligence, and determination. The chamber fell silent as the last echoes of the harmonic pulses faded. Outside, the city was battered but intact. The rogue faction had been repelled, the drones destroyed. Humans who had been hiding in terror now emerged, looking at Mira with eyes full of awe and respect. They had seen something extraordinary. A human had faced the impossible, and prevailed. Xeric's staff dropped to the floor, clattering loudly. He looked at Mira, his crystalline features softened by disbelief and admiration. "You have shown us the power of your kind," he said quietly. "We underestimated humans for centuries." Mira exhaled, finally letting herself feel relief, but she did not lower her guard. She knew this victory was only the beginning. The rogue faction would regroup, the city's defenses would need reinforcement, and humans would need protection. But for this moment they had survived, they had triumphed. Her hands shook, sweat running down her face. Xeric stepped closer and extended a hand, not in threat but in acknowledgement. Mira hesitated, then took it. In that simple gesture, centuries of misunderstanding, fear, and prejudice were challenged. Humans were not weak. Humans were not to be dismissed. Humans could stand, could fight, could think, and could win. The commander groaned, trying to rise, but the harmonic energy held him firmly. Mira glanced at him. He was a reminder. Threats would always come, but humans had something that no brute force could match: courage, ingenuity, and the will to survive. She stepped forward, lifting her head, letting the resonance chambers settle. The city's light reflected off her eyes. She had done the impossible. Not because she was the strongest, but because she had dared, because she had thought, because she had refused to give up. From the doorway, Xeric's voice echoed almost reverently, "Humans may not be what we feared. They may be what we need." Mira smiled faintly, exhaustion and triumph washing over her. She knew this was only the first battle, but humans had proven something today. No matter how impossible the odds, no matter how powerful the enemies, human courage, intelligence, and determination could shine. Outside, the city was quiet again. The threat had been stopped, for now. But the echoes of what had happened would change the way the aliens saw humans forever. And Mira, small and fragile, had become the spark that ignited that change. The commander's eyes glinted with fury from the floor. Myra's pulse quickened. She had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The city of Xerith was quiet again, but the calm felt fragile. Broken shards of crystal littered the streets, and smoke drifted from collapsed walls. Humans emerged cautiously from the shadows, their eyes wide with awe and disbelief. They had seen something no human had ever done before. A girl had stood against overwhelming odds and prevailed. Mira Lorne stood in the grand chamber, her body exhausted, her lungs aching, her hands trembling from hours of manipulating the resonance chambers. Xeric, the high priest, remained at her side, silent for a moment, watching her. Even after centuries of alien knowledge, he had never witnessed anything like this. "You," he began, his voice unsteady, "I underestimated your kind. I thought humans were weak, small, irrelevant." He paused, looking into her eyes. "But you have proven that we were wrong." Mira swallowed. She wanted to feel pride, but the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her. The rogue commander had been contained for now, but he had not been destroyed. The city's defenses were damaged, and humans were still outsiders here, fragile and vulnerable. She had won the battle, but the war was far from over. "Humans are not invincible," she said quietly, "but we survive. We fight. And we think when others cannot. That is what makes us strong." Xeric's crystalline features softened in a way Mira had not seen before. The other priest stepped closer, hesitant yet curious. For the first time, they were no longer towering figures of unquestioned authority. They were witnesses to human courage, ingenuity, and determination. Outside, the city's survivors gathered. Humans who had cowered in fear were now standing tall, inspired by what they had seen. Some whispered, others cried, but all knew the truth. One human girl had changed everything. Mira caught their gazes and felt a surge of resolve. She had to do more than survive. She had to teach, to prepare her people for the dangers ahead. Humans had proven they could face impossible odds. But survival meant more than one victory. Days passed and the city slowly repaired itself. Mira worked alongside alien engineers and priests, showing them how to stabilize the resonance chambers and strengthen the wards. Xeric accompanied her, watching closely, asking questions, sometimes hesitantly, sometimes with wonder. Even he had to admit the human mind was capable of feats his species had long forgotten. During this time, word spread across Virilia. Humans were no longer seen as insignificant. They were the spark that had repelled the rogue faction, the fragile species that had outsmarted the unstoppable. Messages arrived from neighboring cities and alien colonies, some curious, some fearful, all watching closely. Humans were rising in a universe that had underestimated them for too long. Myra's mind often drifted back to the commander. He was still trapped in the chamber, restrained by energy pulses she had learned to maintain. His fury radiated even through containment. She knew he would find a way to return someday. That thought did not scare her, it motivated her. Humans did not shy away from danger. They prepared for it, learned from it, and faced it head-on. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting orange and violet across the city, Xeric approached Mira. He extended his hand once more, this time not in disbelief but in respect. "You have changed everything," he said. "Your courage, your intellect, it has shown us what humanity is capable of. You are no longer a curiosity. You are a teacher, a protector, a leader." Mira hesitated, then took his hand. In that moment, centuries of prejudice and misunderstanding seemed to melt away. She realized that humans would never be insignificant again, not as long as they had courage, determination, and the will to survive against impossible odds. The humans in Xerith began to rebuild their lives. Some joined the temple, learning the language of the ancients, training under Myra's guidance. Others worked alongside the alien citizens, forging new alliances, preparing for challenges yet unseen. Myra's voice became the bridge between worlds, a symbol of what one human could achieve when faced with overwhelming danger. She often walked the quiet streets at night, looking at the towers of the city, shimmering in the fading light. The memory of the commander and the drones lingered in her mind, a reminder that threats would always come. But she no longer felt fear, only resolve. She had faced the impossible and survived. She had turned weakness into strength, fragility into brilliance, fear into courage. And somewhere deep inside she smiled. Humans had always been underestimated. And yet, time and again, they had proven they could rise higher than anyone imagined. Today, Mira had shown that even a single human, armed with intelligence, courage, and determination, could change the course of an entire world. The chamber below the temple hummed faintly, its energy settling into a calm, steady rhythm. It was a reminder that knowledge, skill, and bravery could awaken even the oldest, most forgotten powers. Mira placed her hand on the glowing symbols one last time, whispering words of gratitude in the ancient tongue. The energy pulsed gently beneath her fingers as if acknowledging her effort. Humans were no longer just survivors on Virilia. They were protectors, innovators, and heroes. And Mira Lorne, small, determined, brilliant, had become the spark that lit a new era for her people. As the twin suns vanished below the horizon and the city's lights shimmered in the darkness, Mira felt the weight of possibility on her shoulders. Humans had the courage to face the impossible, the intelligence to solve it, and the heart to endure it. The galaxy would soon learn what humanity could do. And for the first time, the humans themselves believed it too.